and thank you all for taking the time to meet with us today. Very excited about today's presentation. We have a lot of information to go through. A bit of background on me is before we started this company, we actually were a digital agency. And I think the content for this presentation is targeted, I would say, towards folks that are agencies. Of course, there are some people on the phone today that are not working for an agency, so there is some value for those folks too. But primarily, the audience is intended for this is agencies. So the things we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about retainer relationships, some of the challenges in keeping retainer relationships. I'll talk about some of the common communication mistakes and problems and challenges, and hopefully I'll be able to share some best practices that we've learned in our experience as an agency, as well as working with agencies today. And of course, Adriel will be sharing his experience with a case study with his communication and some of the things that some of the wins he's got as a result of effective reporting. So I think really it's a case that all of us here, no matter what business that you're in, but specifically for those folks that are agencies looking to drive retainer relationships, really what the challenge that we're faced with is how do we build strategic relationships with our clients, retain these clients, and as well, it's very important to us. Of course, all of us are interested in growing our businesses, and we're, as agencies, are being paid to help somebody grow their business. So at the end of the day, it's very important to everybody, and it is win-win if we're building strategic, or I should say, building good strategic relationships. And I think, excuse me, I think it's a case that, and really a lot of agencies are in two modes of business, or there's several modes, but I think the two big ones are project-based work, and the second is the retainer-based relationship. And myself, when we were running an agency, I really like the retainer relationship. As project work is good too; it can be profitable, but I really like the retainer relationship because it's an ongoing strategic relationship. The goal setting is a lot more agile. You're working with the clients, trying to help them achieve their goals. You really become a trusted advisor as part of their team. Whereas if you've done projects, typically the project relationship is, you're fighting against a timeline. You're wanting to keep expenses low. You're trying to get what's done in the right fashion. So they're very different. And myself, I like the retainer relationships. And when Adriel speaks today, I know that he does both project work and the retainer stuff. But a lot of the stuff that I'm going to present here today is going to be focused on the retainer stuff. So really, I think that if we think about a retainer relationship, let's face it, it's not like a project. The project, you're in with the client until the project's done. Whereas with a retainer relationship, it's a little bit more fragile, right? The relationship, and one of the reasons for this is that the client, quite often, if you're not doing your job right, they can believe that the switching costs can be low. When we were an agency, I had some clients saying, why am I paying you? I could be going to, something like Yellow Pages to do the same work, right? And end of the day, it's a clear indication that you're not doing your job well in the reporting if you're hearing that type of stuff. Is that again, that's the switching cost could be perceived as being low. And if we think about it, if your client is facing some type of economic problems or some type of issues in their business and the tempo isn't where they need it to be, let's face it, recurring expenses are the first to go, and especially if they are in a cyclical market. So if we think about a retainer relationship, it always starts off, it's, there's this marriage and everybody's highly optimistic. You're optimistic as an agency because you've just brought on board a new client. The client is optimistic because they've now are using a top of the heap, best of breed agency to handle their demand generation problems. But let's face it, as the relationship evolves, there is a change, right? With the honeymoon, once it's over, then it's a case that you're into this long term, you're in for the long haul, and this is where the challenges really are facing both the agency and, of course, the client. So it's a case that it's difficult to maintain that level of excitement throughout the long term. And if you can, then definitely the retainer is guaranteed. So I think I'm going to go through a couple of challenges, and I think that the first challenge that we have in the second phase of the relationship is retaining, the client trust. So why? Well, if we think about it, that an agency is not an employee of the company. So there you are, whether you like it or not, you're an outsider. So it's a case that, and this is the case too for, there is some challenges as well for marketing teams in large companies, is, let's face it, the marketing team is not the sales team, right? And quite often the agency may be perceived as a threat to somebody in the organization, depending on the size, right? Maybe somebody has dreams of becoming a marketer and they were failing before, and hence they outsourced the work to you as an agency. So, and I think that there's a lot of ways that the agency can erode trust during this retainer relationship is, of course, inconsistent quality of work, of course, and no matter what, if you're not delivering at the top of your game month in, month out, your relationship is at risk. Inconsistent response times, and there's a lot of stuff that can be learned from the project work that can be used inside the retainer relationship. And if you're a project manager on the phone, it's communication is king, right? And the response times to when problems happen and when challenges happen is extremely important. And if the response times vary, they got back to me immediately. They got back to me, oh, gee, it took a couple of days. They're actually thinking, while they're waiting for a response, that you're not working for them, right? And then the question is why am I paying you? Comes up. And this is an interesting one, is the next bullet, is inconsistent branding. A lot of agencies, they were, even ourselves, when we were an agency, we were, very keen on, telling our clients that brand consistency is important. You've got to have the branding pristine and timely, etc. Whereas as an agency, quite often the agency's brand, the only time the client ever sees it is on an invoice, right? So, and if your branding changes from day to day or report to report or communication to communication, they're thinking, gee, how are they handling my brand? Right? That's the message that's delivered. And really it comes down to this, is inconsistent communication. If you have inconsistencies in your communication, the reality is it's going to, they're going to immediately jump to the conclusion that you're not working for them. And this is a big one, is that if you can't connect the dots between where the money is spent and how that business is actually getting value from your services, there's somebody's going to be asking the question. Right? And we have two extremes where, oh, I don't have the dots connected, but I'm just going to dump a whole bunch of data on this in my reports, and it'll look like that they're dealing with experts, right? And the reality is somebody is thinking of ROI not as a three-letter acronym, but how much am I getting out of my spend with this agency? So it's really about, and this is the last bullet, and I'll keep going back to this, it's about demonstrating value delivered. Let's face it, all agencies, it's very easy to deliver value, but demonstrating value delivered is the biggest challenge to any agency faces, I argue. So another challenge is, let's face it, and the poll question asked about this manual, marketing is a lot of manual effort. Right? It isn't like it's like we see on TV with Mad Men, where it's all about drinking and smoking pot and just being creative. No, it's a ton of manual effort, and especially on the communication, is that we're doing the reporting. It's manual. And the more manual effort that you have, the reality is there's going to be mistakes. And if you make mistakes, there's back to the eroding the trust factor. And so really the biggest challenge here is demonstrating value delivered. And it's a huge challenge for any agency. And I think that's the reason that it's so challenging is really these 4 gaps. The first gap I'm going to introduce is the concept of a vocabulary gap. You know, as marketers, we spend a lot of time immersing ourselves in the things that are driving marketing and how to do marketing. And as marketers, we can strike up a conversation with other marketers very quickly. We go to trade shows or whatever. It's very easy for marketers to communicate with each other because we have a well-defined vocabulary. And our customers, especially if we're dealing with customers in multiple domain segments, it's a case that they have a vocabulary that's different than yours. And if you're trying to communicate and you're using different languages, there's a problem. Another gap is, like I hinted at, is the domain gap. Like you are in the marketing domain, they are in the making stuff and things. And the challenges that they face on a daily basis are not the challenges that you face. And if you can't get the 2 domains to connect, communication as well becomes very difficult. And the next one is the patience gap. And let's face it, somebody's spending money on your engagement with the retainer relationship, and they're expecting the wins tomorrow. You know, when we were building websites, it happened often as we would go through this process of gathering information and, getting the right strategy in place for the website, build the website, responsive website, and the client would think as soon as that website went live, that the business was just going to skyrocket. So, and we as marketers know that that's not going to happen, right? We know the tempo, whereas there's an expectation on the client side. They have a lack of patience. You know what the tempo is. So there's a patience gap. And finally, the attribution gap is about connecting the dots between where the money was spent and what was the direct impact to the business. So really the solution to all of these challenges in the retainer relationship is better reporting, and that's really the topic of this presentation. So I think that the traditional approach to communication is, and the poll alluded to this, is it's once a month we send a report, right? And it's full of stats. We're going to stuff that thing full of stats so we look like, we are experts at something that they don't dare get into, right? And it's branded with the client's brand because, let's face it, the client loves to see their brand, and we want to demonstrate how well and clean we make their brand look. And quite often, it is a manual process. And when we were an agency, it was a case that it would break my heart. I would have top people, very creative folks, spending literally 3 days a month, 3 full days of doing screenshot, copy, paste, screenshot, copy, paste, and really you can see their souls dying. Right? And it's what do you do? You have to get that report out. And with these manual processes, let's face it, we're probably going to stuff it full of stuff that's easy rather than stuff that's useful. And on the communication side is typically, we wait for the client to phone us, right? Silence is happiness. If they're not phoning us, they're happy. And as a project manager, I don't know, like usually agencies are in the project delivery business rather than the project management of taking and hiring other consultants. But I've been on both sides of the fence. And if it's a case that I've paid somebody to do work for me, whether it's renovating my house or working on some specific infrastructure, whatever, the end of the day is that if there's silence, I'm thinking that, gee, I wonder if they're actually even working on my stuff, right? But at the end of the day, this is the typical approach. A better solution is really to do, consistently and continually demonstrate value delivered. And it's important to understand, like we're marketers, we understand that there is different buyer profiles. There's different profiles in your client's organization. And each of them has a different need. Now, if you're continually marketing to one person in the organization, what happens if that person gets hit by a bus or joins a different company? Your retainer relationship is gone. The rest of the company just sees an expense. So really it's about getting the right message, contextual message, to the right constituent on a continual basis and a timely basis. And ensuring that really all of the goals that are scored by your team are really attributed to the work that your team is doing. So really, and this is the message that I'm hoping that I can leave with today, is that it's really about branding the win. Branding, making sure that your brand is beside the win, so when somebody's enjoying the sweet taste of success, that the wrapper has your name on it. So I'm going to go through a couple of communication mistakes. I've sort of hinted at a couple with the, sort of picking on the traditional approach. And I'm going to talk specifically about the typical mistakes that we do in communicating in a retainer relationship. So really the first one is celebrating the win 4 weeks after the game, right? Now, if you think about that, it's the case that it's like, let's say your kid's in a football league, and you meet the coach once, and the coach says, "Gee, your kid really was out there and caught that ball in that game 4 weeks ago." Yeah, he sure did, right? It's too far away. You're celebrating the win 4 weeks after the game. The branding, you've got to get your branding absolutely pristine and consistent. Every time they see anything that comes from your organization, it's got to be as good as when you're managing your client's brand. And we've got to attack these gaps, these content gaps, the attribution gap, the vocabulary gap, and the patience gap, and the domain gap. So looking at the attribution gap, it's really, you've got to track everything. Right? And I know we all say, yes, we've got to do this. You're just telling me something I know. The reality is, if you don't know what is bringing in the win and cannot connect the dots, you cannot actually celebrate the win and take credit for the win. I still go to websites today, and I see that there's an email address on the website. And if that's being managed by a marketer, I'm thinking, why are they putting an email on the website? Right? You spend a ton of money and effort to get somebody to the website, and then that person gets to the website and clicks the email, types in their email client, and presses send. You have no idea who that was, what got them there, or even the impact that connection with your client had. Right? So remove the emails from the website, force people to actually do something where you can attribute that visit, where they came from, etc., to that conversion. Definitely tracking the calls. As an agency, as any business, the call is the hottest lead, and if you're not tracking the calls, there's a significant attribution gap, and literally, if somebody's calling the business and you don't know about it, and it came as a result of your efforts, you're not going to be invited to the party when we celebrate the win, right? Track the channels, track the form fills, track everything. And I know it seems obvious and everyone's thinking about this, but really the importance here is, I know when we were an agency, the first thing we did when we started the engagement is we plugged all of the conversion gaps. If somebody was going to contact our client, it was going to be tracked, right? Because then, again, it helps us as the scientific marketer as well. Because we want to know, we're entrusted with our client's money. We want to make sure that the money is actually going to stuff that's working. And the patience gap, right, is we've got to have timely communication, right? It's instead of waiting to the end of the month, we've got to get the communication when the win happens, right? As soon as the win happens, or as close to the win as possible, and it's got to be branded with the agency brand. So again, it's don't just wait till the end of the month, and also think about contextualizing the communication so that Many people are getting the communication. It's not just the once a month and somebody's going to read it. You have different audiences or micro audiences inside your client's organization. So it's really try to find a way to increase the size of your audience hearing about the win. And it's a case that, so there's different tempos, you know, there's the best is real time, right? As soon as there's something happens, your client gets it. The daily reports or custom reports for the lead roll-ups for different people in the organization. Dashboards is really real time. It's really when it's convenient for the client to be able to log in and see a KPI dashboard that's right for them. You know, weekly summaries and monthly roll-up. And you know, I've heard the pushback or the thing that most people who are in the monthly mode of communication will say is, oh, you know, that's too much communication is just gonna upset the client. And you know, like I said, if you've ever been on the I'm paying somebody to do something is too much communication. Is there such a thing? And you know, we would track all of the report opens, all of this stuff when we sent it to clients, and we can actually see the CEO getting the report and opening it several times. He gets the daily roll-ups, and you can see when the person's actually opening them. And if he's not opening them, then he's ignoring them, right? And if you're doing it right, you're tracking the reporting too. And the vocabulary gap is, you know, an easy way to do this is really to talk about people, right? Not talk about stats. It's, you know, before I ran the agency, I was running an industrial software company, and I had a global company. It had offices in I think it was 13 countries. And at the end of the day, I had a president's club, right? And many companies, organizations, B2B companies have this, a president's club. Who gets invited to the president's club? Is it the engineers? No. Is it the accountants? No, never. Is it the marketers? No, never. It's only the salespeople, right? Why? Well, if you think about it, they're the ones that are carrying the ball across the goal line. And it's the case that they're the ones closest to the win. Oh, it was that guy who carried the ball that actually scored the goal, the touchdown, right? The reality is no. There's a whole team behind them. So really our job is to talk about people and really we need to understand not only what are the important accounts for our clients, how individual people came into the organization and what was the journey that got them there, and follow them through their engagement with the client. So it's really, we need to know the clients, we need to know the engagements, and we need to highlight specific journeys with specific people as opposed to stats. And that gets back to the domain gap, right? Is again, you're in your world where you understand marketing speak and they understand widgets and stuff speak. Really, you need to understand the business metrics of your client. And if they don't have business metrics, which a lot of businesses don't, help them define them. You'll become a strategic partner. And then make sure that you're pulling the stats out of your communication and talking about the business metrics. You know, cost per click, click-through rate, conversions, impressions, visitors, all of that stuff, retweets, they're not business metrics. And quite often your client, it's just blah, 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 blah. I'm paying you to figure that out. When's my next sale? So it's really, you need, you know, of course, if you are doing account-based marketing and talking about customer acquisition, that's a nice stat. You know, account penetration can be a KPI, closed sales, these types of things. You need to get closer to the person carrying the ball across the goal line. So, and really, it's a case, I can't stress this enough, it's about brand visibility. Your brand needs to be pristine. You know, there's a story, well, you know, if you think about a mechanic, the guy who's working on your car, you know, if he's driving a beater, well, of course it is. He's working all day on his client's cars. Why would he work on his? No, your brand is your business, and you've got to keep it pristine and visible, as close to the win as possible. So now I'm going to switch things over. I'm going to hand things over to Adriel, who's going to talk a little bit about communication with his agency.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Yeah, that shoemaker's children never have great shoes is definitely true for agencies, and I know that you know we're constant we're constantly looking at our own website and rebuilding it. Oh, like an average website should last like 5-6 years. We rebuild ours probably every three, just because it's so important that that our website looks great to our prospects. We're a digital marketing agency here in Edmonton. We've got about 25 employees, which is large-ish for a digital marketing agency. We primarily target commercial clients, which is to say that we don't necessarily go after a lot of government work. The people that work here and the kind of things that motivate them is getting results for clients. We like doing marketing that generally has an impact on the business. So we want to see that impact, and that's what really drives the people here forward. So that's why we primarily target those commercial clients, because they're usually a little bit more goal-oriented and fun to work with, because you can get those wins with those clients. So that's a little bit about the agency. If you can just go to the next slide here, Sean. Now the location that we're in is Alberta, and the funny thing about running a marketing agency in Alberta is that even though like very few of our clients are directly involved in the oil sands business, everyone in Alberta is impacted by these boom-bust cycles of the price of oil. So what that does to an agency like ours is run it through these extremes of famine or feast, and they happen. You know, it's cyclical. If you've had a business in Alberta for a while, you're kind of used to it. But what it does is put a lot of pressure on us to make sure that we don't lose our clients. Back in 2009, we had one of these cycles, and you know, Sean was just mentioning sending a report full of stats to clients. And I can think of I can think of one really good example. We were sending a report to a client. Now this client we were doing SEO work for, and we were killing it for them. We were getting them some amazing rankings that they never should have gotten. And that's what we were reporting on. We were reporting on all these rankings, and that's what this 20-page report was about, was just stuffed full of rankings reports. But the price of oil went down. That company started to feel the pinch. They fired that marketing person, and then our reports, which the previous marketing person knew how to read and knew about all these different ranks and why they were important, that got handed up the food chain to his boss, and he didn't see the value in these ranking reports. It wasn't readable to him. It didn't talk to the business metrics that they were concerned about, and we got fired. And that really hurt back in 2009. But it was important for us to go through it, because we got to really focus on how do we stop that bleed the next time this cycle comes around. So you can just go to the next slide there, Sean. Yeah, I mean, our clients downsized in a big way, and for a lot of them, marketing was a cost center. It wasn't business generation. It was, well, we're this big, and we should spend. We've heard we should spend 10% of revenue on marketing, or 5%, or X% of profit, and you know, it was for some companies out there, it's an ego thing. I want to see my my business on a billboard, or I want to see my business online, or whatnot. And when push comes to shove, that kind of marketing gets cut, because it's not related down to business results, and people get fired, people move on, and those reports that you know, a lot of agencies give their reports to like their juniors, right? The junior people write these reports, and you know what happens when your point of contact changes at a company? Your junior's work is handed off to the next person whose job it is to evaluate whether they should continue on with you or not. Talk about the wrong kind of report and the wrong kind of person to put in front of a client at a really crucial time, right? So if you can just go to the next slide there. What we did is take a look at quote unquote like the girls we date. For the businesses we work with, what are we doing for them that that is delivering value, because ultimately that's the stuff we need to be working on. That's the stuff we need to be highlighting in these reports. And for a lot of our clients, we're making the phone ring. We weren't, you know, doing online sales. They weren't doing like a lot of completion. For a lot of them, it was still just the old-fashioned call-in that was the business result they were looking for, and we weren't tracking it. So how do you optimize your marketing efforts when this huge portion of the results isn't tracked? It becomes very difficult. So that was something that we focused on as a very high priority item that we would need to do is track those phone calls. We also delivered these high quality net new leads. What I mean by net new is that they're not people who would have found that company otherwise. So by doing our online advertising, we were getting these clients new business, and we needed to prove it, and not just prove that we're getting them conversions. You know, if you're in Google Analytics and you're reporting on that, you might see those conversions there, but like real people, real high quality leads, not just, you know, garbage. And the third thing that we needed to show was showing what marketing worked and what didn't. We pride ourselves on being transparent with our clients. If we try something and we head into it with the best of intentions and we've got a good strategy for it, and we get in there and we find out it's not working, we're not going to just be dogged about it and say, oh no, it is working, and you know, ride it into the ground. We want to pivot quickly when marketing isn't working, because that clients can understand. Clients can understand that, you know, marketing has inherent risk, and they're willing to pivot and move in a different direction if you can show that why they need to. If you go to the next slide. So we took a look through some of the different marketing automation platforms out there. We looked at HubSpot, Marketo, Pardot, and ActiveDemand. And for the set of goals that we had, just on that previous slide there, we found that ActiveDemand would do them all in a tighter format and match better the kind of clients that we're going after. So if you can just go to the next slide there. And there's really two things that we're doing in our reports that are really killing it for us. One is that we outline the journey of one hand-selected lead each month. So we're still doing those monthly reports. We do other daily and weekly things, but we've still got those beefy monthly reports. But the idea with that journey of one hand-selected lead each month is that if that report gets, if our point of contact moves on from the company, gets fired, whatever, that report, that journey, showing them how that hand-selected lead, which is a good quality lead, and hopefully it's come in through the marketing that we've done, that's really understandable. That's something that the CEO of a company can understand, right? That's something that the new point of contact can understand. Oh, you know, we wouldn't have gotten that that client to our doors if it hadn't have been for TopDraw. And the second thing that we did is really drill into attributing the opportunity in sales to the marketing that we're doing. So trying to get like really close to the business results and closer than we had before, because our kind of MO before was to use Google Analytics, use that conversion stat, give them a number. We got 12 conversions this month, and really drill into that. So if you can go to the next slide there. I've got an example here of a lead story. Other than I changed the name on this one. This is a real lead. This is a screenshot I took of one of the reports that we sent to a client, and it kind of speaks to how we got that person to the website, what they did, the different things that they did on the website, and this is understandable by a CEO, by someone coming on new, and this was a lead that turned into a $700,000 sale for this client. So when we start talking about, like, yeah, you know, TopDraw, oh, you know, they cost us X amount per month, but oh, you remember, you know, we got that one lead that was $700,000. We should keep going with them because you know, this is a really tangible way of showing it. And we like to work with our clients for the first 3 months and make sure that we're tracking these, because the first 3 months is really important to get some wins. With a customer that has a long sales cycle, we may not be able to show them a sale, but we will be able to show them a lead and some really good tracking, and that's something that not a lot of clients are used to. They're not used to getting this really good tracking, this really good attribution. They're just guessing, right? If you go to the next slide there. And the other thing is providing numbers in their language. Again, this is directly from one of my customers' monthly reports. So we're tracking phone calls, we're tracking contact us form submissions, and we're tracking estimated revenue value based on real numbers. So we've got these numbers on phone calls and contact us form submissions. They've got numbers from their salespeople that I spoke with on how many of those need to make a sale and their average sale value. And from that, we can pull out an estimated revenue value. And that estimated revenue value is damn good for making sure that I don't get fired as an agency, because look at that number. What do we got here? 3 million this month, 3.1 last month. These are some pretty good numbers to show to a client, and they survive that transition from that person that I've been talking to other people inside that organization. That's the important part. You can go to the next slide there. So the result, number one, better client retention. So clients with, you saw that last slide. Hey, these guys are making us $3 million a month. You know what? We should probably cut them. Who's going to say that, right? So much better client retention, and that client retention, being able to retain them and work with them and prove the results, really helps with sustained growth in retainer business, and that sustained, steady, adding on more clients, working more with them, like as a business owner, so much easier to allocate for, to hire for, to understand and to plan for than projects. And the third thing it does is improve staff morale. And this one, I was just thinking about it. My staff are really motivated by getting results for clients. So they love seeing those numbers too. They get job satisfaction out of it, right? Being able to see that they're doing stuff that matters, that is getting results for clients, and they're not just designing a beautiful ad that's going to win awards, but they're also getting great results for those clients that matter. So if you can just go to the next slide here. What this has done for us is really break the cycle of boom and bust. In the 2009 crash, we lost 80% of our clients from the U.S. We'd been doing SEO and SEM for U.S. clients, and we lost quite a bit of them here in Canada as well. Now, this most recent downturn in oil has been much more prolonged than that one in 2009, but we're not losing those big numbers. We're actually gaining. Our retainer business, I just actually took a look yesterday. Our retainer business has grown 10% year over year in a down market. And for Alberta companies, that's a pretty big thing. Our unemployment rate is double what it was last year. Our home sales and car sales are down 15 and 20% respectively. So gaining 10% is an incredible thing, and I attribute it to that, understanding those clients, making those reports great, because those boring reports are what will save your butt when your point of contact leaves, or when the clients are pressured in terms of budget.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Adriel, and about your great success. And you talk about employee morale. Let's face it, that in the down market, a growing company like yourself is a great attracts people to your organization as employees. So again, you get top talent, et cetera. People like to work for a winning team. That's the reality of it, right? So thanks again for sharing that with us, Adriel. So I think that the final comments I just want to say is that I mentioned about we're doing this manual process, and you're saying, Sean, gee, I have to put way more work into my reporting and communication, and that's exactly what I'm saying. But I'm saying that you can actually automate as much of this as possible, because if you can automate what can be automated, it's a case that you can focus more of your manual effort on creative things rather than administrivia. And really, the idea of automation is to transform the role of people, again, from laborers to, in this case, it's to creative, right? It's reduce the time to deliver and consider to do this as a unified reporting platform. Now, I know most of you folks on the calls today, you have a large set of tools that you're using to execute your marketing. You have social tools, email tools, web tools, survey tools, and those of us that have had to report with Excel, we know the pain. And if there's one thing that makes it very difficult to remove the manual effort from the process is this juggling of tools scenario everybody's in. Because really the challenge is the data is in each of these individual packages, and it makes it very difficult to visualize what's going on. And if you have to report out of these packages, each of them will represent your brand differently. And hence, active demand, which Adriel hinted at, is the true multi-client. What I mean by multi-client is somebody that's marketing for multiple clients, integrated marketing and reporting platform. And really, it's you don't have to use the entire tool set. You can just use the reporting because it does link into many other platforms. But really, the tool set, email marketing, landing pages, social media dissemination, website tracking, we're leaders in real-time behavioral segmentation and dynamic data delivery. And of course, our reporting and branded dashboards and white label solution is a big win for agencies. And of course, integrated call tracking is the key to tracking the big win. So really, strategic relationships, I think I've hopefully effectively communicated that they're built on trust. And communication is very important. That's actually the most important aspect of maintaining and building trust. And I think that moving away from the big, fat, thick, once-a-month report to more of a agile communication infrastructure where your reports are contextual, personalized, timely, just like marketing, and automated is a way to success. So really, our messaging from our business is really to simplify your marketing stack, simplify reporting, stop juggling, and start marketing. So with that, that's pretty much the content